All right, so the title of this presentation is Using Social Media to Make Friends and Influence Growers. So keep that in mind as we move through these slides. So I want to start by talking about me on social media personally. So this is my Facebook page. I've been on Facebook since 2009. It's primarily a personal page, although I am friends with a lot of colleagues on there, but they're usually colleagues I know well enough that I don't mind if they know I'm crazy. Okay, so you can see here at the top, there's other accounts they can find me on. So if they do want to know more of my professional posts, there are ways to get to that information there. But conveniently, the reason I wanted to draw attention to this is I have the same username for all these accounts. So I think that's something important if you're just getting started with your account for your work team or for yourself personally, to see if you can find a username that is available across all those platforms. That just makes it really easy for other folks to find you, to tag you. Like if you share something on Twitter, but they also, want to share it on Instagram, you have the same account name on all of them. So that's one tip. The next is Twitter. I've been on Twitter since 2013. This is primarily a professional account. So I'm, connected to a lot of colleagues on this account, but every once in a while I'll share pictures of my kids or my dogs or my goats, just something so that my followers know I'm human, right? And I do dorky stuff just like everybody else. This is my Instagram account, basically just to share pictures I take that I think are cool. Again, it's mostly what goes on around my house. These are my kids, that's my husband. So again, I share some work-related stuff sometimes, but it's not my primary outlet for that. That's really Twitter. And then this is my blog. So again, this is something I started when I was a county-based extension educator, a way to get information out. So if you look at some of my previous posts, you're like, this has nothing to do with produce safety. That's because I don't really use this account anymore. It's pretty much limited to if I speak at a conference and I want to share that information with a wider audience, then I'll post it here. So for example, this particular post has had 19 views, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 19 people that weren't at this Caneberry conference that now have access to that information. So the reason I share these with you is just to let you know that you can have accounts on different social media apps for different purposes. And they each have a different audience. And so I tailor the message for these accounts to meet what that audience is expecting, what those followers are following me for. Okay, and again, Twitter is my primary outlet for produce safety and fruit and vegetable production information. These are the Produce Safety Alliance accounts. So I've been managing these accounts since I joined the PSA team back in 2017. Gretchen still posts to the Facebook account a couple times a year. She managed it before I joined the team. The Twitter account I started once I joined the team in 2017, and I started the Instagram account in 2018. I'm also one of the administrators for the PSA YouTube account, primarily for the videos I create. It's just easier for me to upload them than to ask somebody else to. Now, my goal for the PSA accounts is to post something once a week. Some weeks there's no news or no new resources to share, so I have a bank of like, did you know facts as social media graphics. So if it's a slow news week, I have a folder of things I can share on those slow news weeks. But other times we have 3 or 4 posts. Like I've already posted 3 times this week to our accounts. So it kind of comes and goes, and you just need to plan for that. And also during this time of COVID-19, when we're all grounded and we're not out interacting with other trainers and growers, I've tried to do one getting to know the PSA post per month. Again, it's not professional information, I know, to tell people what your favorite ice cream is or what animal you feel represents you. But it does help our audience know that we're human. It's kind of a get to know us exercise. And those have been a lot of fun. So again, these are professional accounts, but it is still a good idea to share some of that personal side of you on occasion. Okay, so now jumping into social media in general, just a little bit of background, and this information comes from the Pew Research Center. There's a lot of information they post online. Use of social media in both public and private sectors continues to grow. It's a really great way to share information. So looking at this graph on the right, you can see by age groups, how many US adults use at least one social media site by age. And as you would expect, younger folks are more reliant on social media than older folks. But even those numbers are growing. So almost 45% for those over age 65. So social media is a really great way to get our information out to our clientele. Today, around 72% of Americans use social media to connect with each other, to engage with news, and to share information and entertain themselves. So again, this is a really great space to be in. So a little bit more about the individual platforms. Today I'm going to focus on Facebook and Twitter primarily, but talk a little bit about Instagram. Facebook remains one of the most widely used social media sites among adults in the US. So about 70% of adults use Facebook. And the users come from a range of ages. More than 2/3 of people 50 or older use the platform. So this is a really great space to get our information to folks that are over 50. Twitter is used by 22% of US adults. Internet users are more in urban areas, and more men use Twitter than women. So that's something to keep in mind. Twitter might not be the best option for you to get your information out to your stakeholders, but it is a great place to connect with colleagues. So again, you might want to have a professional Twitter account, but use Facebook for your team or your organization. There's certainly information to back that up. And then finally, Instagram, which significantly skews towards our younger audience, ages 18 through 29, are our biggest users on Instagram. So again, this information comes from Pew Research Center, but this also, I can tell you that this information is also true for the PSA accounts. Just a little bit more about social media platforms in general. Again, from the Pew Research Center, Facebook and YouTube continue to be the most widely used online platforms among US adults. So you can see that there, followed by Instagram, and then the rest of them are all kind of grouped down there together. Facebook is a pathway to news for around 4 in 10 US adults. Again, followed by YouTube, then Twitter, then Instagram. And roughly 3/4 of Facebook users visit the site on a daily basis. In fact, these dark blue bars show users that visit a site several times a day. So 51% for Facebook, 42% for Instagram, only 25% down here for Twitter. Then we have about once a day and less often. But this is pretty good news that, again, it's a really great strategy to get your information out to your audience, because chances are they're going to see it if you're posting something, because they're there once or more in a day. A little bit of marketing information. So some reasons for using social media. The top one here is increased exposure, followed by increased traffic and generated leads. So the question has really moved from whether to use social media to what types of social media should I use and how often should I be posting to it. And we're going to talk about some of that as we move through these slides. 94% of marketers are using Facebook, followed by Instagram at 76%. And I apologize for my dog. She's very protective. There must be somebody outside. When asked to choose one platform, most marketers chose Facebook as their most important platform. And again, I have seen that in the PSA Facebook account as well. That is certainly where we get our most likes, our most views, our most shares is on Facebook. All right, now shifting gears, I want to talk about cultivating your profile. I mentioned before, it's a really good idea to pick a username that you can use across multiple accounts because it makes it easier for folks to tag you and to share things with you. It's easy to find you that way. Whether representing an individual or a group, the account profile should tell viewers what you have to offer, why they should listen to you. So for my Twitter account, for example, it says Produce Safety Alliance Northwest Regional Extension Associate. So that's my professional title. I'm passionate about fruit and vegetable production, food safety, and engaging youth in the food system. So those of you that are familiar with the Produce Safety Alliance, you would assume that I'm interested in food safety, but I also have a background, as Giovanna mentioned, in fruit and vegetable production. And so a lot of the stuff I share is broader than just produce safety. So I share a lot of stuff about diseases and when to plant and other stuff like that, because I do still have an audience from when I was a regional extension educator for fruit and vegetable production. I'm also very passionate about engaging youth in our food system. So oftentimes I share teaching tips, things about school gardens and community gardens that are along those lines. So again, if somebody's visiting my profile, I want them to know that I share more than just about produce safety. You can also tell just from this simple image that there's something about peaches that's important to me. Now, most accounts are going to include their team website here. So again, for the PSA account, that'll take you to the PSA website. But since this is my personal account, and Twitter itself is limited to 160 characters for this very brief bio, I've linked to an About Me page. So it's more like my About Me page on my blog. So it gives a lot more information about who I am, what my degrees are in, where I'm from, and kind of lets folks know what I'm all about. So if they want to reach out to me for more information, for example. And here you can see I did mention peaches. That's the crop I studied for my PhD. So those were actually some of my peaches that I measured and weighed and looked at for quality. So again, it's totally up to you what you want to use in your profile, but those are some of my tips. So, you know, be very careful about this very short bio you're allowed to have. Link to additional information and try to find a username that you can use across multiple accounts. So this is the PSA Twitter page. So again, you can see we've got produce_safety here. Our Facebook and Instagram accounts are Produce Safety Alliance, but that's too many characters for Twitter, unfortunately. So we weren't able to use the same username across all three platforms. But folks are still able to find us, so that's pretty good. Again, you can see here that the website that we linked to is the PSA website. You can see when we joined, you can see how many accounts we're following and how many are following us. This is our Facebook page. Again, same information, we just had to shorten it a little for Twitter. You can see how many people like us, etc. All right, so best practices. And again, there's tons of information online. Most of what I'm going to share is coming from this URL I've provided at the bottom. So best practice is to log in every day to monitor your accounts, respond to posts, comments, mentions, and post frequency really varies. Like I said, for the PSA accounts, my goal is to post once a week. Twitter users tend to expect more frequent updates, one or more per day, because you know that timeline just keeps rolling. It's good to post several times a day. It could be the exact same content, just posted with a different message. And Facebook users expect less frequent posts. So again, if we're posting 1 to 3 times per week, that's typically what Facebook users expect, want. It's not clogging up their timeline. Although everything we post is really good information, right? Some additional best practices: create posts directly in each app. This is something I think is really important. There are some services, and I'll talk about some here in a little bit, like Hootsuite, that allow you to post to multiple apps at once, or even in Instagram. If you share something to Instagram, you can also share it to Facebook, but they rarely look right. So for example, in Instagram, I could say, yes, I also want to share that to Facebook. But what happens then is then this one is Twitter. So you get the same message, but rather than share the picture, it relays people back to Instagram. So if I see this as I'm scrolling through Twitter, I'm not likely to stop and look at it. Where if the picture itself was posted directly to Twitter with this message, then I might stop and look at it. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. Pay attention to your insights and analytics. I'll talk about this more at the end. But if you're putting all this work into cultivating a social media account, it's important to take time to look at those insights and analytics, if not monthly, then yearly. And anybody who's on this call, if you're in extension, you know we have to report numbers every year. Report these numbers too. For a long time, social media was just kind of seen as this extra thing we did for fun, but it really is valuable. It is a great way to get our information out to our audience, and so we need to be reporting those numbers too. And let your fans speak. Whether what they have to say about your message is positive or negative, it's important that we accept that feedback and don't get too upset about it. So if it's something that's racist or really offensive, go ahead and delete it. But if it's just something critical of your message or your program, you might want to consider leaving it and responding to it so that folks know you read their concern. So this is how I decide what to do with those messages. So again, I've provided this URL at the bottom of the slide, but this comes from Virginia Tech, and it's just a flow chart to figure out how to handle this feedback we receive on social media. So if it's a complaint, is it accurate? If so, we can address it. If it's inaccurate, we can correct that information. If it's a compliment, then go ahead and respond and say, wow, thank you, I really appreciate that. If it's a request for more information, well, that's easy. We're happy to share more information. And then if it's another issue like a rant or a threat, right, then this flowchart kind of helps you know how to deal with each one of those situations. So I recommend downloading this to your computer or printing out a copy of this flowchart just to have for when you get that feedback and you're kind of wondering what to do with it. Because I don't like conflict, and so I don't enjoy responding to that. And so it's nice for me to have, that extra guidance for how to handle it. All right, I shared this during the September call. Again, I've provided the URL down there at the bottom, but this is just a social media post checklist. The anatomy of the perfect social media post, which again, there is no perfect social media post, but these are some components to think about as you're crafting your social media post. The first one is the headline, the best practices, right? So if this message were truncated and your viewers could only see a couple sentences, are they getting that most important information up front so that they know if they want to see more and they can click on more? The next is a power trigram. I had never heard that term before I came across this article. But basically, power trigrams are three-word combinations, and what they've done is they've distilled down what are the most powerful three-word combinations that draw people into your social media post. And here are those top headline phrases measured by average Facebook engagement. Number one is will make you. This information will make you rich, right? This information will make you successful. So if you have those three words in your post, that's more likely to draw folks in. Or this is why. Also, if you can frame something as a question, like, did you know about this? That gets people's attention too. So again, this is what they mean when they're talking about trigrams. So then back to the anatomy of the perfect social media post. The next is line breaks. So you can see here how this post has some line breaks. You've got space there. You might as well use it. Again, by using line breaks, it helps draw that important phrase out to your viewers. The next is quotes. So again, if you can quote somebody, that gives it value. Hashtags. Again, the more we can use hashtags, it makes it easier for folks to find our posts if maybe they're not a follower of us, but they're interested in produce safety. If we use a hashtag produce safety and they click on it, then they're going to see our post. Mentions. So again, if I interview somebody or if somebody contributed to an article or a fact sheet, I want to make sure that I mention them in the post so they also get those notifications. And visuals. I would say always use a photo. So posts with images are more likely to get noticed. So this is just a comparison of some of my Twitter feed, my Twitter news feed. You can see on the left, those 4 posts do not have photos. So there's nothing really drawing me in. It's just a bunch of text. I'm probably going to scroll through those pretty fast. Versus the B list on the right, those each have an image. They draw me in, they make me want to know, you know, up at the top, what are they doing at that farm? You know, I'm more likely to click on that post, read more information, expand the photos so I can see what's going on. But make sure your image is the correct dimensions for the app. So you can see in these 3 photos that Twitter makes them all 3 the same size. So knowing that, I edit my photos so that they're already the right size. Otherwise, Twitter might do it to cut off somebody's head, right? And it's just going to look weird going down a timeline and just seeing a set of shoulders. So I edit those on my own before I upload to Twitter to make sure that they're cropped the way I would want them to be cropped. So what I've shown on the slide here is the dimensions for Facebook and Twitter. They're pretty similar, but Facebook does allow you to have a slightly taller photo. What I do for the PSA posts is I format it to fit Twitter, and I use the same photo for both Twitter and Facebook. But you could do it individual if you wanted to. And then also GIFs and videos are also great. So I'm going to give some tips for that as we move along as well. But thinking about images, there are lots of sources of royalty-free images online. I like Pixabay and Unsplash, so those are really easy to use. You don't have to pay a membership or log in, and everything that you download from there, you know, is free to use. You don't have to pay to use it. Now, it's still nice to give attribution, you know, add a little, you know, source and then who you got it from on top of the photo, but you don't have to. And then Shutterstock is another one, but that one you end up paying for. So if they have great photos, you might only be able to find the photo you want on Shutterstock. Just know that it's going to make you pay for it. Another really great source for photos is USDA on Flickr. But again, you have to check the permissions for each photo. The one on the left is public domain. So I can use this photo. Again, I don't have to provide attribution, although personally I try to, but it's not required. That's a public domain photo. Where the one on the right is some rights reserved. So if I click on this, it's a hyperlink. What I learn is those restrictions. In this case, I must give appropriate credit, provide a link to the license, and indicate if changes were made. That's not a problem, right? I can easily do that to be able to use this photo. So again, this is USDA on Flickr. So I encourage you to scroll through some of their photos. They have some really great photos on there. You can also use Google's image search, but again, you just want to make sure that the photo you choose is labeled for reuse. So again, there's a lot of photos on Google, but that doesn't mean they're all up for grabs, right? And your local university may also have photo collections, so I encourage you to check that out. For us at PSA, Cornell has a really great photo library. And again, we just scroll through, we can type in search terms and then check out what are the, you know, the share rights and go with it. So that's a really great source too. So then photo editing, again, I edit the photos, I crop them to the dimensions that I need for the social media use I am using. I often just use Twitter for both Twitter and Facebook. So I make it a 16:9 which is really simple because your cell phone does that. The app itself does that. But what it does is if you look at this photo here on the right, it's a great photo of my daughter washing her hands at a portable hand wash sink. But it's a little distracting. It's not very focused. So before I share this on Twitter or Facebook, I would crop it. Okay, I'm getting rid of some of that gravel parking lot. I'm getting rid of the tent stake and most of the cars in the parking lot. So we're really focused on her hands. Again, if I just posted that photo on Twitter, it would crop it however it wanted, and it might not end up the way I would like it to in people's feeds. The other things I've done with this photo that are kind of hard to see on the computer screen, but I brightened the image a little bit. I tend to decrease the shadows to make something pop. And then I sharpened it as well. So if something's a little blurry, you can sharpen it. So again, you can do these. Usually your phone has really great capabilities to edit photos, most of the new phones anyway, but you can also do this in a computer app if you want. The next thing I wanted to mention is, what if you want to remove a background? So sometimes we have a really great picture of somebody, but they were standing in front of a green wall or something. And we want to make a social media graphic that has some text and has a different colored background. So for example, the slide I've got right here has a nice white background. Here's a photo of my coworker, Tommy Saunders. He's our Southeast Regional Extension Associate. This is a great photo of him, but it has this, kind of beige background, which isn't the end of the world. But if I want, I can get rid of that. So there is a website called remove.bg, which I've included on the slide here. And if I go to that website and I upload this picture of Tommy, I can get rid of that beige background. So again, if I'm creating a social media graphic, that's a great way to have it focus just on Tommy, get rid of that distracting or unnecessary background. So that's a really great tip I learned this year. Okay, you're gonna take a breath. I talk really, really fast. Again, I'm really excited about this topic. Shifting gears now, I want to talk about how to make those social media graphics. So these are, what I tend to post for those did you know PSA posts in a slow news week. But I also use it to create social media graphics for my personal accounts as well. So this one here for the asparagus, basically it was just a, did you know there's no such thing as GMO asparagus? So it drives me crazy when I see something listed as GMO free. Don't pay extra for asparagus plants just because they say GMO free, because there isn't any that are GMO. So this is Adobe Spark or Spark Post, which is a really great app. This is the one I use most often. The free version puts this hashtag down at the bottom. It's not too distracting, but just to know that that's an attribute of the free version. Cornell University actually pays for a subscription, so I have the professional version of this app that I use, and that gets rid of that hashtag down at the bottom right, and it also allows me to add my own logo. So here you see the Produce Safety Alliance logo. I can use that because I'm using that paid version. Another thing I like about Spark Post is it's a great way, if you're just using a picture, to put that attribution. I found this photo on Flickr, and it required, or I just chose to say, here was the source. I found it on Flickr, and it's Creative Commons license BY 2.0, right? So that's another great way to use an app like Spark Post, is to give that attribution for a photo that you want to accompany your Facebook post or your Twitter post. Because again, in Twitter, you're limited character-wise. So you don't want to waste those characters giving attribution for your photo if you can just do that on the photo itself. So that's Spark Post. Okay, the next one is Canva. A lot of folks like using Canva, and you can easily sign up for this one using your Google account. And there's a ton of different things you can do free. It just seemed like everything I wanted to do cost money. And then again, Cornell pays for me to use Spark Post. So I don't use Canva in my current position, but I did in my previous extension position. It allows you to design presentations as well as social media graphics. So there's a lot of additional uses with Canva, lots of different layouts to choose from. With both Canva and Spark Post, they have a photo library, so you can search for photos. And again, they're going to pull from some of those same websites like Pixabay and Unsplash, and you can upload your own photos as well. So that's another option. So both Spark Post and Canva, I would say I would use to make social media posts, so specific to social media. But for those of you that are in extension, there are also apps that are really great for making infographics. So you could even do like a full page handout with graphs and photos. So the next two I want to talk about are really great for that. Now, these are still great images that you could use in a social media post, but they're a little busy for folks to get the full effect without downloading a larger image. So this is PictoChart. It's great for creating interactive charts and maps. They have lots of different icons and images, and again, you can upload your own information. My oldest daughter really loves this one. She's used it a lot in school. The next one is Easily. Again, infographic templates, they're very colorful. There's lots of different illustrations you could use, 1,000 different designs to choose from. And again, an infographic is 100 times more likely to be read than just a plain text handout or a plain text post. Okay, so they're colorful, they draw people's attention. That's why I recommend, if you've got a lot of information like that to share, to put it into this kind of format. And again, these are things that you just really have to play around with, play with the different designs that are available. I don't have time to go into all of that, even though it is something that I really find interesting. Okay, so I just wanted to cover that briefly because that's ways to really boost your post to draw folks in, is to use one of those apps to make it visually interesting to draw folks in. The next thing I want to talk about is alt text. So alt text is really important because some folks on social media are visually impaired. They're using a screen reader to get that full information. So if they're just, using a screen reader to look at this post from the PSA, they may not understand that there was a photo that went along with the message, right? This photo isn't great. It's not like it tells a story at all, but I still want to make sure that I'm as inclusive as I can possibly be in my post. So I always add some alt text to describe what this photo is supposed to be illustrating. Alt text also provides better image context and descriptions. So when search engines are looking at our pages, they can better index that image. So some tips for writing alt text: keep it short, but present what's in your photos accurately enough so that someone who isn't actually viewing the photo can understand the context of that photo. And don't repeat what's in the post. So if the photo really is already described in the post, then just say that, described in the post. So for example, this picture, it's a potted plant, it's next to a computer. If you let Facebook describe that photo itself, which is what it does if you don't add your own alt text, all it says is plant and indoor. Well, that's not useful, right? The post is about attending a remote grower training course. So I want folks to know that this is a flower pot. It's next to an open laptop computer. So that's how it's related to my message, not just that I have an indoor plant. That has nothing to do with a remote grower training, right? So definitely encourage you to use alt text for every image you attach to a social media post. And you can do this on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, shifting gears again. Here's another app I love. This is Tall Tweets. This will convert your Google Slides to a GIF, and then you can share that GIF on Facebook or Twitter, so you can download it. So I like to do this with the PSA training map. So all I've done is I have copied each one of those maps into a Google slideshow. And then I just save it and upload it to Tall Tweets, give it a little bit of extra information, like how long I want each map to show on the screen, and then it does the rest. It turns my Google Slides into a GIF. And then I can share this on social media. Again, it's a great way to pull folks in rather than just saying, here's the training map from last quarter. I can say, look at how far we've come since September 2016. So that's tall tweets. I also like making videos using these two apps. So you've probably seen our dancing bear. He's a reminder of how long to wash your hands for. I created that video using the app Biteable. And we have several other videos created using this app as well. Both of these apps charge a monthly fee, or you can pay by the year, which is substantially cheaper. So for example, Biteable is $49 a month if you want to create 3 videos a month. So if you pay for it for the whole year to be able to make 3 videos a month, then it breaks down to just $29 per month. So it's one of those things to think about is how many videos do I want to make? And they now have a pro version. When I created this bear video, all they had was the light version. Now with the pro version, they have a lot more characters, they have a lot more templates. So I encourage you to check it out. But you can't just pay on a video by video basis. They're going to make you pay for a monthly subscription, just to warn you. So again, that's something to think about. The video on the right was created in Animoto, which again charges a monthly fee, but it gives you more flexibility in how long the slides stay on the screen. So the problem with Biteable is you're limited. They're about 6 seconds long, and they also are very restricted with how many characters you can have on the screen, which has been a real challenge now that we're translating all our videos into Spanish, because those Spanish phrases are a lot longer. The words are longer than in English, and I have no flexibility in Biteable to make that change. What I end up having to do is make 2 slides for one phrase, which is fine, but it's not as smooth as in Animoto. I have more options. But in Animoto, I don't have those cute animated characters. So, you know, it's a trade-off. I see uses for both of them. Okay, so those are some of the ways that I make the PSA social media posts pop. I try to share information in ways that's kind of exciting and draws folks in. But now switching gears again, just to some specific tips for each one of these platforms. The first is some tips for using Facebook. Again, strongly encourage you to include a photo or an infographic, a social media graphic in every post. Posts with images earn 2.3 times more engagement than posts without images. Also, keep it short. Again, Facebook doesn't limit us character-wise anymore, but posts that are short, like a tweet, receive more engagement. Folks are going to read them. If you've got 6 paragraphs, they're probably not going to read all of that. You know, you can easily link to more information on your website for folks that are interested. Schedule your posts in advance so the account is active even when you're out of the office. You know, I manage all the PSA accounts, but I get them on my phone. So it's easy for me to keep up with that. But again, I schedule those in advance, so all I have to do is hit post. And then monitor your page insights and include them when you're reporting your program impact at the end of the year. Already talked about that. I like this particular infographic, so I've given you the URL there at the bottom of this screen. But it walks you through how to get more likes on Facebook. Okay, so we can see how many views we have, but we really like those likes, right? They make us feel like we're doing something right. So the first is the what. Focus on what to post. Again, photos get 53% more likes, 104% more comments, and 84% more click-throughs to additional information than posts that are just text. Also, posts with 80 characters or less, again, keep it short, get 66% more engagement. So try it out, see ways that you can, you know, reduce your message to just get people's attention, and then provide a link where they can go for more information. Question posts get 100% more comments. So if you can spark some sort of dialogue, like what do you do on your farm to address this? Okay, Again, that's probably not a really good example because growers often don't want to share what they do. But if you use some sort of question to get folks engaged in a conversation, you're going to get more comments on your post. And then be a good listener. Okay, so make sure that you're then following up, that you're commenting back, that it really is a two-way flow of comments. So we focused on what, now we're going to focus on when you post. Just because activity occurs at certain times doesn't mean those are the best times to post. So you really need to test what works best for you. What I have found with the PSA accounts is it's better if I post in the morning because then more people have a chance of seeing it that day. But what you can see in this infographic again is that they had the best activity when they posted on Wednesday and around 3 p.m. So it's going to differ depending on your organization, what that peak time is. But that's one of the reasons why it's important to look at those Facebook insights. So go into your account and look at that information to see when is my account most active. And then again, posting a couple times a day is going to get you 40% more engagement. So people are more likely to see if you're posting more often. And posting 1 to 4 times a week will get 71% more engagement. So folks will get used to seeing your information. So that's Facebook. A few tips for Twitter. That's a tongue twister. Again, include a photo or infographic in every tweet. Use a dashboard application like TweetDeck or Hootsuite to manage your account. These are great ways to schedule your posts in advance. So the account is active even when you're out of the office if you don't have control via your cell phone like I do. You can also create columns for tweets that mention you or certain keywords or hashtags that you want to keep an eye on. I have a list of PSA trainers, for example, so they don't get buried in my feed. And then again, use analytics and use them when reporting your program impact. I strongly encourage you to use social media during events, both personally and if your organization is involved in an event. But what I'm showing here is an event that was totally unrelated to me and my organization. So this is from back in 2016. So if you're familiar with Food Tank, they have regular events where they bring in some big name speakers and they broadcast it over the internet. They tend to share a lot of links, a lot of additional information during those events, but they often don't have anybody from Extension. And so they're missing all the great resources we have. And so back in September of 2016, I participated in the live stream of the Farm Tank conference, and it was being held in Sacramento. And basically, I just watched along throughout the day, and I was constantly adding information in Twitter using their event hashtag, which was hashtag Food Tank. So I shared 16 tweets and 17 retweets. So again, my followers were then benefiting from the information being shared by this conference that I thought was valuable. But also I was inserting Extension information into the conversation. And I occasionally still get likes and shares from that event back in 2016. So how's that for impact, right? So on the right, what you see here is, and again, this is an old image. I don't think you can even get this particular view from Twitter anymore. But my tweets, just in that 24-hour period, earned 23,000 impressions. So again, how many people did I introduce to Extension that day? So again, I think it's really important to think of the value of using these platforms, both for our own events, but also when we're a participant, so that we can get our message inserted in the conversation. Okay, I know this is a really great slide title for me because I've been talking really, really fast nonstop for 50 minutes now. But slow down. Read through your post before you hit post. Before you hit enter, make sure it makes sense. Make sure there are no typos. Instagram and Facebook will let you edit your post if you do find a typo, but Twitter will not. So then it's immortal, right? As many of our politicians have found out. Once I share this, anybody can take a screenshot. This particular post from back when I had the opportunity to talk on this topic back in September, it was a mess, and I didn't realize till later in the day. Now, after folks have liked or shared or commented on my tweet, I don't want to delete it, but I can't edit it. So basically, I admit that I'm human. I provide a comment that says, I just realized, there was something wrong with my post. Here's the correct information. So that's one way to handle it. If you screw something up, it's not the end of the world. And there is value in letting our followers know that we're human. Okay, I talked about some of those platforms that let you manage your account. So this is TweetDeck. This is my preferred way of managing my Twitter account. And this is really important because I personally follow over 900 accounts. There is no way I could keep up with everything that 900 accounts are sharing on Twitter. So I use TweetDeck to make sure I don't miss those posts from the important people. Again, our PSA trainers, our regional centers, things like that. So you can see this column on the left. This is home. So this is everything that shows up in my Twitter feed. Again, there's way too much there for me to keep up with. My next account is produce safety, not account, column is produce safety. So again, that's where I have PSA trainers. I have CDC, USDA, FDA, the regional centers, folks that I don't want to miss what they post. This fourth column here is food system extension. So again, I've been in extension since 2006. So I have a lot of other colleagues all across the country that post, about all different kind of topics having to do with food production, food processing. So again, those are folks that I want to keep track of because oftentimes they share things that are pertinent to produce safety. And that way I can like and share them as well. Notifications just tells me if someone has liked my post or commented on my post, so that's good. But what I want to draw your attention to is this one here in the middle. So TweetDeck allows me to have a list of search term. So the search term I have here is produce safety. So this notifies me if someone posts something that might be related to the PSA, something I might want to like or comment on the PSA account. So for example, here at the top, Oregon Department of Agriculture still had a couple seats available in their November Produce Safety Alliance grower training course, but they didn't tag PSA. And I'll get to this in a minute, but that's the type of post that PSA will like, okay? We want to support our trainers. And so by seeing this in my search list, then I can look it up on the PSA account and like it. So again, any post that includes the words produce and safety is going to show up in this list. Now I get a lot of random stuff that has nothing to do with PSA, things about aircraft maintenance. But I do get a lot of really good stuff from our trainers, from our partners that I do then like from the PSA account. The other one I mentioned is Hootsuite. I just wanted to bring that up. It did come up at the September call. This is not one I use. I know it's a lot of extension educators love Hootsuite. One of the good things about it is it allows you to manage multiple social media platforms at once. Again, TweetDeck is just Twitter. But so I just wanted to put this here to mention it. Again, I can't really talk about it because I haven't used it. But that is one of the benefits to using Hootsuite. So if you do use Hootsuite, feel free to add something to the chat about why it's so great, why you like using it. All right, I've mentioned several times the importance of looking at your analytics and using those numbers when you report your impact at the end of the year. So for example, this is a tweet of mine from August 12th. If I click on that little bar graph at the bottom, it brings up this wealth of information. So even though I only had 3 comments, 2 likes, and 2 shares, 763 people saw this tweet. 67 of them engaged with it. So they maybe clicked on one of my URLs. Okay, so that's really good information for me as an educator. Again, reporting my end of year numbers, but also it tells me what kind of posts my followers find interesting. So I want to have more posts like that are going to get that engagement. You can also get a monthly summary. So for example, March of 2020, I had 16.3 thousand tweet impressions, 23 mentions. I posted 40 times that month. 337 people visited my profile, and I got 23 new followers. It'll also tell me my top tweet, the top mention, my top media tweet, so this one down here at the bottom, so the picture that had the most interactions, and then my top new follower. So again, that's a way to get kind of a monthly snapshot of your Twitter. All right, so then shifting gears to PSA Facebook, because my personal Facebook doesn't really apply here. This is our PSA Facebook about information. And again, I report these numbers annually. So I know how many new likes and follows we got in the past year, for example. These are our post numbers for the last month. So again, I can look at it month by month and say, okay, these posts were our most popular posts when we hired new folks, when our clicker questions were translated into Spanish. I can see the reach, I can see the engagement, likes, reactions for each one of those. So that's really good information to be able to report. And again, it tells me as the social media account manager, what kind of posts our followers are most appreciative of. And that brings me to this point. So this is a fact sheet that came out last year. It's our commercial soil amendment supplier. What is the documentation that is required for growers to get from those suppliers? And this posted really well. So we got 1,468 people reached. There were 39 reactions. So that was when I shared it back in October of last year. But then it was featured in the National Association for County Agricultural Agents meeting in September of 2020. So I shared it again. And you can see we reached 621 folks with 15 reactions. So again, these types of posts do really well on the PSA accounts. But then we translated this fact sheet into Spanish. And all of a sudden we have 1,845 people reached and 69 reactions. So again, this just drives home that point about how valuable these social media accounts, and Facebook in particular, are for getting our information out to our Spanish-speaking growers and Spanish-speaking trainers. So again, I can't state enough how valuable our social media accounts are. If you look at Facebook analytics, these are the demographics for the PSA account. 24% are women in ages 25 to 34, 16% are men in that same category. So again, it gives us an idea about who our audience is. And then also it will tell you by country, city, and language. So again, United States, as we would expect, but a strong following from Mexico. And again, English and Spanish are the top two languages folks speak that follow our account. So again, I really encourage you to look at this information every year, at least once a year. I look in October because that's when we meet as a team. So that's when I report out this data, but you could do it at the end of December or whatever works for you. All right, just briefly about our Instagram account. Again, this is our newest account. So I look at it every year to see how are we doing, how many followers do we have. These are our recent posts. You can see this isn't everything I post on Facebook and Twitter because Instagram doesn't lend itself to all those different types of posts. For example, it doesn't provide a URL. So a lot of things we share on our social media accounts take folks to additional information. They take you to a fact sheet or some other tool you can use. It's a little bit harder to share those in Instagram. These are our most popular posts in the last year. And you can see that how I get around that issue with Instagram is you can say, follow the link in our profile. And then you just update the link in your profile when you post an image like that. Okay, so wrapping up, I promised you that this would help you make friends. So how will this help me make friends? Okay, so funny story. I attended a professional conference in 2019. And when I walked into my first session, I hear, Connie, my Twitter friend. very enthusiastically. So I followed an extension educator from Florida on Twitter, and he followed me back. And we often like and share each other's posts. So now we have a foundation that when we see each other in person, we can have a conversation. But this is someone I didn't know before. There's no way I would have met him otherwise. I'm shy. I'm not going to just go up to someone and say, hi, I'm Connie. But now he considers me his Twitter friend, just because we have this relationship now due to social media. I also have connections with graduate students and early career researchers that have resulted in invitations to serve on panels. So this is me in 2019 at IAFP, serving on a panel because some graduate students follow me on Twitter. So again, it has been really good for developing these relationships that I personally wouldn't have developed otherwise. And then finally, when will PSA like or share your posts? So I mentioned before, if you tag us, that's a really great way to get my attention, that you're mentioning something that has to do with PSA. So for example, if you tag us and say you're having a PSA grower training course, then I'm going to like that. That's going to boost your numbers, right? And if somebody searches for that, it's going to come up in their search terms, which is also good. If you don't tag us, I might see it if it happens to show up in that Twitter list of search terms, but I might miss it. So if you want us to like it, please tag us. Also, if I see you responsibly sharing PSA resources, or if I see that you're sharing something, maybe it comes up on that produce safety search terms list for me, and I see that you've come up with a resource that I don't have any concerns about. So if you post something and I'm going to read it before I like or share it on the PSA page. So if there's anything in it that I'm like, that's not quite right, I'm not going to share it, just to let you know. And then on slow news weeks, I may even share your resource directly. So again, if I don't have anything to post and I want to post at least once a week, I'll go online and I'll search and see what are some new resources or what's been added to the NECAFS clearinghouse lately. And if there's something that I think is good, that I think a larger PSA audience would appreciate, then I can share it directly. Another word of caution about tagging us if you want us to like your PSA course is to make sure you're using the correct words. And this caused a bit of concern when I talked about this in September. But right now in COVID-19, chances are the courses you are offering are remote courses. You're offering them via Zoom. Make sure you use that word, remote. If you call it an online course, I'm not going to like it. Currently, the only online PSA grower training courses are offered through eCornell. They are taught by the PSA team. So again, this is something that was covered in our newsletter last month. So if you have questions about that distinction and why we're so adamant about it, I encourage you to go to the PSA website and click on News, the News tab at the top, and it will explain more about the difference between using the words remote and online. And if you have any questions, you can also reach out to me and Donna, and we'll help walk you through that as well. All right. That is it. It took just a little over an hour. So now it's your time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing